This is Making Waves with Pastor Mia on Heaven 600. Tonight's roundtable discussion is what is American spirituality? And we have joining us a fine group of men for this roundtable discussion.
My name is Jamar Barnes. By day, I work with youths in foster care. I was a former foster youth. That's my passion. By evening, I'm a full-time grad student getting my master's in social work. And by night, I work at a homeless shelter as an advocacy counselor for clients with HIV and substance abuse.
Dr. Umar Johnson, Doctor of Clinical Psychology, certified school psychologist and principal, private practicing school psychologist in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, author of the book Psychoacademic Holocaust with Special Education and ADHD Wars Against Black Boys.
My name is Babalal Fardare. I am an ordained Ifa priest, also a licensed acupuncturist in the state of Maryland. My background in clinical treatment is mental health and substance abuse.
I'm Marvin McCastry, leader of the Liberation Movement.
Wonderful, wonderful. Let's jump right into our first question, which is, what does American spirituality mean to you?
American spirituality means to me, we have to find a distinction between spirituality and religion. America is an ideology, so I want to deal with the distinction because there's a real difference between the both. Religion is the organization set of rules of practice in the institute that kind of constitutes your spirituality. Your spirituality is the universal search for meaning and purpose, and also for your higher being.
I think the term itself has no basis or foundation because when you're talking about America, America is a country that's dominated by people who are not of native descent, and spirituality here in concept is a melting pot kind of idealism, as my brother said, focused on a bunch of different religions, and it's kind of anything goes. People believe in a freedom to believe whatever you choose to believe. And most of the religious practices and things of that nature are rooted in spirituality, but more tradition and ideology that has no spiritual foundation.
When any group of people has a clearly defined and long-held tradition of standards, of practice and behavior, they have a civilization where people can run off and do whatever they want at any time. There are no standards. No one is accountable to anything about anything they do or to anyone. You have a society at best. One could say that American spirituality is kind of like a cafeteria religion concept. Since so many people pick and choose what they find socially palatable and fashionable, and they call it faith. Their belief is basically whatever's politically correct.
All right. Dr. Umar Johnson, would you like to answer this question?
I would add to what was already stated by saying that when you deal with spirituality, it's important to keep in mind that although you can structure spirituality to a point where it doesn't become religious, you still have to allow for personal innovation in that individual's unique spiritual struggle or pathway, which is to say that I think whether we deal with religion, even if we deal with traditional spirituality, there still seems to be a degree of dictatorship in how people go about the path of finding their own God self. And I think that freedom, that component of freedom is something that needs to be protected because you can't really prescribe someone's spiritual development. Their relationship to the supreme consciousness is a very personal thing. And I think what distinguishes spirituality from religion is one's ability to add their own unique ashe to their spiritual path, as opposed to having it dictated in any type of a cookie-cutter fashion, one size fits all. Spirituality allows individualism in spiritual expression.
Wonderful, thank you. Would you like to say something, Jamal?
No, I wanted to agree with my brother, but...
Okay. Next question. What do you believe and why? Who'd like to take that one first?
All right, I guess I'll start off on this one. As an ordained priest in the Yoruba cultural tradition, I'm grounded in knowing that Olodumare, which is the Yoruba word for God, is the source of all that has, is, and can exist. It is beyond gender. No image or temple can exist to represent it in the Yoruba conception of things. Olodumare has established the destiny of the human race, at the same time allowing for individual choice by each human spirit. It is said that free will begins in heaven when one approaches Olodumare and asks permission to be born into the world. At that time, one will choose what it is they want to accomplish in that particular lifetime. That personal choice, that free will which begins in heaven, rests upon a broader species-wide destiny established by Olodumare, which is that all of the goodness in heaven should be brought to manifestation on the earth, and that there is no other aspect of creation which has been given that task except human beings. We are the ones most capable, having been created to do that. But we are also the ones who are in, unfortunately, the best position to ruin it and turn things around completely opposite. So that's the broad definition in terms of our species, the human race, if you will. But the individuality of choice is central. Every human being makes their choice. No one can decide for any human being what they came into the world to do. And if a person chooses to set out on a path that's destructive, or if a person chooses to set out on a path that is constructive, the answer of Olodumare is go and reap the consequences of the choice you have made. If you have chosen a good path, one can get off track. But there are opportunities and systems to help you get back in alignment with your true self. If one has made an unfortunate choice, they still have in their lifetime the opportunity to straighten that out. It all comes down to individual choice and responsibility.
Very, very interesting. I believe that, and this is Jamal, I believe that we have a creator, and I want to thank Brother Umar for just giving me such good knowledge through the years, but we have a creator, and we are the creation. So therefore, our creator is an essence of the creator in us, the creation. So in other words, even with religion practices, you have an essence, an essence of spirituality that bleeds through its practices. But the problem with those practices is that it's been perverted by those in the religious organizations for their own selfish agendas. I believe it was the Quran that said, "Oh Muhammad, I'm closer to you than your own vein that pumps through your blood." So it's suggesting that your creator is within you. God works through you, not for you. The Bible even said the temple of God is within. So, we are gods in the flesh. That's what I believe in.
All right.
I agree with much of what's been said, and I think that one of the things that Jamal just said is that we have a tendency to fix so much of our ideology towards the subject of God, creation, religion, or whatever you want to dub it, on the mispractice or the twisted and vain ideology of so many people who have sought to, use it towards their own gain, even in this country. Me being a practicing, I guess if you want to, for lack of a better term, Christian, we received Christianity in slavery as Africans in America as a systematic form of control and dominance by a white slave master who sought to use ideas of spirituality, us being a naturally spiritual people, to keep us enslaved. And I believe that anybody in their pursuit, especially in this country, if you are African in America, your pursuit has to go while you look into identify with who you are. You have to look to the source. You have to look to the Creator to understand His ideals when He created you. And I believe that Genesis 1:26 defines a man in God's image, being created for God's purpose to do the things that God set him in the earth to do. And when we get past all of the other things that normally are divisive and separates us as people, you get back to the reality that God created man in His own image and in His own likeness, created a male and female, and He gave us a purpose here, which is to be stewards over this earth, to subdue it, and to make it fruitful, to be fruitful in it and multiply, much like Jamal said, to be used as instruments for God, as tools for God, as to fulfill His purpose in the earth. And much of that is twisted up because we have such grand representations of man's ideas towards how they can use this to further their own agenda.
Wonderful. Dr. Umar Johnson, can you jump in?
Oh, yes, ma'am. I would add this to the conversation. Coming from a psychological perspective, I think we also have to deal with the contradictions of assumed spirituality, and two of them that come to mind for me. The first being African people, African American people, for lack of a better word, they tend to, as the brother said, esteem themselves of being spiritual, I think, in excess of what they actually are. Being a therapist, I come in contact with a lot of people, those who practice traditional religion and those who are in traditional spiritual circles who, by their own definition, would consider themselves spiritual, but they suffer some of the greatest depression, greatest anxiety disorders, greatest trauma, grudges, unmet needs, low self-esteem, alcohol abuse, cigarette abuse, drug abuse. And I think a lot of that grows out of the romanticization of spirituality. I think in our community, we have fallen into this mindset where we like to look like we're spiritual. We will dress like it. We will talk like it. It's the same thing as it relates to black consciousness. But when you really look at the quality of someone's, mindset, you cannot be spiritual and have that many personal psychological crutches and fears and consider yourself to be approaching God. So I think that's one of the things that has to be dealt with. Our people are very psychologically unhealthy. At the same time, they claim to be so spiritual. So that's contradiction number one. The other contradiction I'm finding is for you to be truly spiritual, for black folk, and this is speaking collectively to the race, for us to be so spiritual, it would be impossible for spiritual people to have that type of relationship to supreme consciousness, to accept the type of oppression and degradation that we allow to go on a daily basis. You cannot be that godly and at the same time accept so much of the devil's treatment. I mean, when you look at the economic condition, when you look at the state of the black family, when you look at the situation involving our youth, particularly when we're dealing with miseducation, and we see all these black boys who are literally being manhandled in these schools with special ed and ADHD and everything else they're throwing at our children, and yet you have a community that has the financial wherewithal to fix that problem themselves without no governmental intervention and choose not to do it and yet claim to be spiritual while your children are suffering hell every day. We have to look at the contradiction. If we were that, then our material situation will look a whole lot better than what it is now. So the question becomes, how do we go from this superficial spirituality to something that is real, that can be evident and obvious to everyone around us?
Dr. Umar Johnson, I agree with you 1,000%. And I believe if we really pay attention, again, me being one that is of the, for lack of a better term, Christian church or Christian movement, it comes back to accountability to leadership. When you go all the way back to the days of the civil rights movement in the late 50s and early 60s here, black people, by its greatest and still greatest known leader, was taught a philosophy of someone hits you on one side of your face, you turn and let them hit you on the other. And I believe that it's these kind of ideologies that our fight for freedom isn't a fight at all. but petitioning and begging your oppressor to recognize you and to keep you, to bring you to a place of equality with him, while he's never demonstrated at all that was in any way, any part of his agenda, is one of the reasons that we have such a passive ideology when it comes down to our own community and the changes that are necessary in our community. And whenever a voice raises up in our country to speak against the ills that are perpetrated against Africans in America, it's always sought after and sought out one of those pacifists, the Jesse Jacksons and the other guys, to come along and to calm this people. It's tragic, but I believe that it begins with a level of accountability towards those who always come out to make themselves representatives of us. I tell people all the time that while I am a follower of the Christ and Christianity, none of these preachers in their passive way, their passive mindset represents me, because I'm not going to ever teach my sons that if someone hits you on one side of the face, you turn and let them hit you on the other, because that's not what I've been taught through my personal study and my own understanding of the scriptures that govern, I guess for lack of a better term, the religion that I ascribe to.
I'd like to co-sign what the brother just said. One of the oldest dichotomies in our community, and this goes all the way back to, so to speak, like 2 seconds after we got dragged off the boat in 1619. Those who wanted to stand on their own, develop their own, remember their connection to their ancient past and build on it, and those who wanted to assimilate, integrate, and dilute themselves in a place that never showed even one moment of respect. If you go back to the 19th century, you will find this dichotomy. It didn't start in the 20th century. If you go back to the 1700s, you find the same dichotomy. This term Negro that used to be the standard term for our people up until the middle of the 20th century was something that began at near the end of the 19th century, the 1800s. It was a battle between those who named themselves personally and their organization African, and those who decided that they were going to put that to the side and somehow find a means of getting acceptance from the larger society. And for the next nearly 100 years, this Negro state of mind dominated. We have begun to climb out of that pit, a tar pit. But the dichotomy is not something that just started recently. There are those who think that they are going to realize something by diluting themselves in this system, suffering from the illusion of inclusion.
Oh.
There is not one person of color who will not meet disrespect in this system. I don't care what position you have. The person who is now in the White House, when he gave his first address in front of the entire Congress, was spoken to in a manner in which no president in this country previously had ever been spoken to.
You're absolutely right.
If he had have followed what should have been his first mind, he should have told that fool up in the peanut gallery that this is not the time or the place for petty personal gripes, and put his behind in position, and then continued his speech. But he muzzled himself.
You can't be the
He is the
man.
CEO. Okay? And even, I understand the concept of not being the angry black man, but the other thing too, you must remember, the chief executive officer of any organization is not in charge of that organization. They carry out orders. I don't care whether it's Xerox, IBM, you name it.
You're right.
The charter and
It
the agenda.
is the board of directors, quote unquote, those who handle the money, who are in charge.
You're right.
So even the President of the United States dare not even look over the fence outside of the plantation, lest none walk off.
All right. Anybody else want to jump in? The question that we're talking about right now is, what do we believe and why?
One thing that I would like to add to the conversation, if I could, and this is something that I see that allows spirituality or religion to be a stumbling block to the political, economic progress of African people worldwide. Me, myself, I study Ifa, and I also have friends who study all the different other African spiritual systems, from the Dogon to the Kemet, the Khan, so forth and so on. And I have a lot of people with whom I work who are traditional Muslim, Christian, Jehovah's Witness, you name it, Catholic. And the one issue I see for black people, irregardless of their spiritual system or their religious affiliation, is their color blindness when it comes to dealing with issues that are critical for the preservation of African people. I see colorblindism in the South. I see it in the Khan. I see it in the mainstream Muslim Sunni mosques. I see it in the Christians. And for me, that's one of the biggest obstacles we are facing right now as it relates to African people solving their issues, because we're still ascribing to this universal, colorblind approach to dealing with other groups of humanity, which does not serve us. Everyone else's religion and spiritual system serves their political and economic agenda, except black people. We're the only ones, if you look at the Jewish religion, it serves the Jewish economic system. You look at the Arab, you look at the Chinese, everyone's spirituality serves their political and economic agenda, except for black people. We actually split ourselves into where we have to go to one place to get our spirituality, and we have to go somewhere else to struggle and organize to help black people. And that contradiction should not exist. You should be able to go to the same place to get your spirituality, and that same place to organize and improve the conditions of your brethren. Any religion that doesn't allow for space for the political and economic organizing of the people can't truly be about God's work, because God's work is not poverty. And that's what black people are dealing with, a poverty of consciousness, a poverty of material existence, a poverty of political and economic development as well. And so I think that moving into the 21st century, we're going to have to seriously deconstruct this colorblind reality, which has been with us as long as we have been African people. In fact, it's one of the reasons that made it so susceptible, made Africa so susceptible to conquering from the outside, because we saw the Arab and the Asian and the East Indian and the white man as our human brothers and sisters. We have to get out of that colorblind mentality and ascribe to an African-centered, race-first philosophy that puts our people's needs first before we consider the needs of any other people. There's no way we're going to come out of oppression holding the hands of other human groups that do not like us any more than the European does.
I like to wholeheartedly agree with that. I would only add that along with having that as a cornerstone of how we move forward, even in terms of our own group, let us look critically at what a person is doing and the company they keep. And everything else goes by the board. If I want to know a person's character, whether they are outside of my group or from my own community, I will look at the company they keep and the behavior that they are consistently displaying. And I will know where the enemy is within just as easily as I will recognize the enemy that's outside. We did not pay attention to the consistent behavior of the people from outside of our group. We did not pay attention to the fact that those people gravitated to the useless ones in our own community. That should have been a sign, if nothing else.
All right.
One of my favorite readings is from the author from Ghana, Ikwe Arma.
Okay.
He's the one for my personal growth and experience who piqued me to that fact that what laid open our homes and community and countries was the fact that we did not pay attention to how these strangers gravitated to the useless people in our community and vice versa. Those who were not really standing for the development, the stability, and the propagation of our own community, how they quickly ran to these strangers, seeking all types of material gain, irrespective of what kind of damage it might do to their own families, let alone the rest of the community. We didn't pay attention to that. People look past it. People look past it, especially in respect to people who were in positions of authority. So we have to make sure we are always keeping a very critical eye on this.
And we also have to look at how anyone who begins to move us as a people to an awareness or a central idealism that is rooted in us as a people, as Africans in America, is easily vilified. Even when you get beyond the religious boundaries and those things that have become more of a separatist kind of idealism for us as a race of people, anyone that kind of raises up and say, hey, let's be black first, is easily vilified in this country, because when we are about ourselves, we're considered the racist. Although our race is the most pillaged, plundered, and raped of all races, especially in the United States of America. Mm-hmm. And anybody that begins to speak black power, black empowerment, is easily labeled as a villain, because they want us to chase after that ideal of equality, and that freedom comes not when I connect with and identify more with me, but when I'm more like them.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Yep.
All right. Really quickly, I want to give a shout out to our sponsors, IFN, HB Tours, Nelson Auto, and the Home Store. And I want to go to our next question. We have Kyle Berkeley, who just stepped in, and I'm going to go first to him with this wonderful question. Do you believe that our ancestors have a connection and a purpose for us?
Yes.
All right.
I believe that our ancestors, even as our ancestors here in America that was brought here on the ships, those people that came here that are connected to us knew what freedom was before coming here, or had an idea what freedom was. And as time went on, those people who wanted us to have the right to learn, read, write, learn arithmetic again, and be independent beings again in this country, they definitely had a purpose for us. I could trace my roots back to the Scriven Plantation in South Carolina, and I could tell you my family members, Thomasina Garland, Wright Garland, they wanted nothing more for their kids and their grandkids to go to college and go further, finish high school, because one was a teacher, one was a cleaner inside of a house, because she couldn't work in a hospital, so she had to go and work in white people's houses and clean up behind white women and white men while they smoked and rape happened, things like that. My great grandfather was a carpenter, so these things happened. The Berkeley Plantation in Virginia, Rice, Virginia, Farmville, Virginia. Another my ancestor on my father's side. Was a sharecropper. Didn't even have the right to own his own farm, even though it was in the family name. So I believe that there was foresight for us to do better from the ancestors. Even though they didn't have the means to say, here, here's the money to go to school, or here's the money to build up your community. I'm going to pass knowledge down to you, and I want you to go further. So, yeah.
I want to say, and this is Jamar, I want to say that, I think that it's important that we that our spiritual connections is with our ancestors. The problem is that we don't know how to invoke them. And that's very important through our spiritual matriculation. We have immediate ancestors that fix problems. So if we don't connect with those problem fixers, instead of, trying to invoke on ancestors further down in the line, then I think that that's where the problem lies, that is how we invoke our ancestors.
The Bible said that we're surrounded by such a great cloud of witness, let us lay aside every sin and every weight. So for me, it's a lot simpler. People in this earth have given you the example of what to do and what not to do. And I believe through our ancestors, those that we have seen gone before us, whether it be in this country or in a homeland of Africa or really anywhere in the world, we have been given such a demonstration of what intentions people display through their actions, what has brought us into many of the conditions that we continue to exist in now as a people, and those who have set a way for us to be able to come out of many of those conditions. So, it's critical that we be able to understand that we don't make the same mistakes that got us on the ship. We don't have the same disfigured sense of understanding that causes us to buy into and believe in false promises and think that someone is going to give us something that hasn't been given to us over 300 to 400 years of false promises and lies, that we don't continue to buy into, even those Africans in America that have become a part of the establishment, the audacity of hope and everything else that has given us a false sense of promise and ideas that we are going to do anything more than prosper once we finally buckle ourselves down as a people and begin to raise ourselves up as a people. I respect many that you would think, according to what the common ideology is, teach and believe. I respect what Dr. Farrakhan teaches as it pertains to nationalism, black nationalism, and many of those who don't call themselves Christians or followers of Christ, because beyond my religious practices and belief system is a people who are hurting, a people who are dying, a people who are crying. And while we have a little Italy and a Chinatown and a place where others have established and identified as their own, even inside of communities in America, all we have is the projects.
Every city has one.
Yes,
No
well
little
stated, well
Africa.
stated. Yes. As I'm looking at things, first of all, we, all of us sitting here, anybody who's capable of listening or seeing what we're recording today, all of those people are our ancestors returned. We are here to do something that's worthwhile. We're here to do something that's worthy of emulation. We asked to come here. In the perspective of Yoruba theology, we asked to come back. So we should be about the business of doing our best to realize our destinies in the most wonderful way we can possibly carry it forward. Our ancestors pray and work in heaven to uplift the fallen ones amongst our own family lines, along with supporting the stability and the propagation and the ongoing improvement of our family lines, as well as this human race. This is the way I understand it from what I've studied of Yoruba theology and other spiritual systems that I've had the opportunity to read up on and delve into. Whatever path any of us are on in terms of our spirituality, all spokes lead to the hub.
Awesome.
You see? All spokes lead to the hub. We're all on this wheel of life, and there's only one place to go, and that's to the center. You see? And all spokes are leading to the hub. So there are many things that those of us who are truly seeking will have read this, read that, might have been a part of one thing or another. But the basic thing that I have to come back to is that, as the cliche goes, that we are standing on the shoulders of our ancestors.
Mm.
So beyond standing on the shoulders of our ancestors, we are our ancestors returned. And it is our duty to do everything in our power, no matter how small it might be, to contribute to the kind of future that we need to see before we pass on back into heaven, and that our children need to see who are coming behind us. There's nobody, with all due respect to people who faithfully are following the Judeo-Christian Islamic tradition, I will say the following. There's nobody coming. God sent us.
Ooh. Okay. Before I go to my next question, I want to give Dr. Omar Johnson an opportunity to address the question, which was, do you believe that our ancestors have a connection and a purpose for us?
I would say that it's deeper than that we are our ancestors, that all of us are the reincarnation of someone of our bloodline who pre-existed coming back to finish a job that was still yet uncompleted. There's some research that has recently come out from Western science, by the way, so-called empirical data, that suggests that the DNA in our body responds to our emotions.
Mm-hmm.
It responds to our mindset, our behavior. It responds to the various hormones that are released during happiness, stress, during spiritual exercises, and other things like that. So even when we look at Western science, which only supports what we as African people have known since the beginning of the time, and that is that we carry our ancestors around with us. They are in us as much as they are outside of us, just like supreme consciousness itself. So when we say, are the ancestors with us? Do they have a connection? Do they have a plan? We are them. The question becomes, where is the dividing line? Because the separation, between the living and the dead is a very thin separation. Because the dead are always living, and the living are always on their way back to the realm from which the dead came from. When we talk about heaven, people look at heaven as the destination. Heaven was actually the start point. We came from heaven, and we're here to do a job. So heaven isn't only the destination, it was actually the starting point. So I believe that our relationship with our ancestors is just as deep as our relationship is to oxygen. We could not exist without them. They are always with us. But like Jamar said, a lot of us are very, very spooked about tapping into that ancestral energy. We're very spooked about ancestral veneration. The European has done a superb job through his propaganda campaign, as well as Hollywood, to basically scare black people away from dealing with their ancestral power, which is interesting because we see East Indians, they have a renewed interest in their ancestral power. We look at Chinese culture, Japanese culture, Native American culture. Every non-white culture on the face of the earth has ancestral veneration as a central part of its contemporary culture, whereas black folk, who are the originators of ancestral veneration, we're running away from it. And a lot of that is due to the ignorance that our people don't realize that venerating your ancestors is not the same as worshiping God.
That's right.
Okay. Just so I'm clear what I'm hearing, can you be a Christian and truly advocate for Black Pride?
Absolutely.
How can you not?
I just want to be clear to our listeners.
If I can kind of pull out one of the things that Dr. Umar said, he said that heaven was the starting point and earth's the destination. We seem like this is foreign in ideology, but then we take the prayer that Jesus taught us to pray, where he said, thy kingdom come, thy will be done in earth. We say on earth, but in earth, as it is already being fulfilled in heaven, already have been done in heaven. This is the exact same idea, but when it's not properly taught, when it's not properly understood, then it comes across as something foreign. I don't understand how you can be anyone in a place of Christ-likeness, since the question was about Christianity, and you not have a bleeding passion for the redemption of your own people. How can you not do that? One of the first things that's taught in the Gospels about Jesus the Christ is his lineage. The generations by generations in which he came down, because it was important and central that we be able to identify those things in him. But when Dr. Umar says it, it comes across as though it's something new because it's not properly taught. It's uncommon to those who profess to be Christians because they are not teaching it that way. We teach it in isolation and segregation to make a point in the quote-unquote sermon, the homily. But we've got to realize that this stuff is not foreign and it's not new. It's, as he said, as the system has been taught in America, as a system to enslave and to disempower the people of African descent, our churches still have not gotten back to the simplicity of that truth. Because our churches even resemble the plantation, as I was sharing with you earlier. You got Master, who's God. Master on the slave plantation was the owner of the home. He didn't deal with the slave. The slave was dealt with by the house nigga, who in this particular case is the pastor. The pastor eat better, live better, look better, dress better than all of the field niggas who were in the congregation. Our churches to this day still resemble the slave teachings of a white slave master who used Christianity to disempower and enslave. And nobody has a problem with it, because we still on Facebook and YouTube dancing around talking about how glad we are to know God when we have no sense of knowing him because we don't know ourselves.
Well spoken.
And that's coming from a Christian preacher, me.
Well spoken. Well spoken.
Okay. All right. I would like to introduce our lay servant, Mickey Stanton, so she can do our spiritual vitamin for tonight.
Living in America, we as a whole rarely find peace. There's so much chaos that has consumed our world. Part of this is because we have so many distractions that regular social stimulating contact is obsolete. We are taught in this age to go outside of God with our concerns, even down to what we should feel. Whenever we are faced with a challenge, we Google it. We idolize Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and look into items others buy, talk about, and what they show of themselves. But how often do we go to God in that manner? How many hours do you seek his presence? God has always been from whom our peace comes, no matter what you call him, whether you call him I Am, Jehovah, or the Great Spirit. We have lost touch with our God and his Holy Spirit in our everyday lives. Many, many years before the Bible was brought to the soil of this nation, the words of the natives stood strong in their presence of communing with God. Native American prayers echoed this land in search of appreciating God and empowering each other. The American spirituality now needs to take a strong lesson in the prayers of then. There was no worry of what their lives would hold, as they knew God had all things under control. We now must take those true American soul traditions and those of our Bible and truly dig deeper into what it means to be a believer in God's love for us. O Great Spirit, whose voice I hear in the winds and whose breath gives life to all of the world, hear me. I come before you, one of your children. I am small and weak. I need your strength and wisdom. Let me walk in beauty and make my eyes ever behold the red and purple sunset. Make my hands respect the things that you have made, my ears sharp to hear your voice. Make me wise so that I may know the things you have taught my people, the lessons you have hidden in every leaf and rock. I seek strength, not to be superior to my brothers, but to be able to fight my greatest enemy, myself. Make me ever ready to come to you with clean hands and straight eyes, so that when life fades as a fading sunset, my spirit may come to you without shame. Father, I ask that as we pray tonight, someone somewhere grew a little closer to understanding that even this native prayer can help us get back to our roots in talking to God. For in order for your peace to dwell within you, we all have to commune with God first. Amen.
Amen. My next question, just so that I'm clear, okay, Elder Baba?
Yes.
Okay. Do you believe in a Savior? Do you believe in Jesus Christ? You said something earlier. I wanted to make sure I was clear on what you said.
I believe in all the avatars and prophets of God the Most High that have come to the earth for thousands of years. They have all come bringing the same message. There's been no difference in the message, no matter what country or epoch the avatar or prophet appeared. They have all come with the same message. That we are sparks from the divine. We are echoes of the divine word, returning to source. We're inseparable from the source code. Some people like to say in the terms of like quantum physics, we're the universe getting to know itself individually and return back.
Okay.
Without having lost that individuality.
I got that. Okay, but you said earlier, if I'm not mistaken, there was nobody coming back. So I just wanted to make sure I was clear and I was hearing you correctly.
Even if an avatar, if I can use that term, or prophet is coming back, that has never been in any epoch or in any culture the final arbiter of what would happen with a people. The final arbiter is what the people themselves choose to realize is their own true nature. That one who comes back as the avatar is an exemplar. I remember, and I got in trouble in Sunday school for this. I had to be out of Sunday school for almost a month.
Ooh, okay.
I was starting to read, and I ran across something in the Bible. All that I have done ye shall do and more. And they threw me out of Sunday school.
This is another place that we again have to understand the concept by which the teachings of what we know and received as Christianity, again, the idea of the deity returning was almost as though the Christmas story to the slave, that if we did not do this and we did not do that, we would not go here, we would not go there. So while I am a person that believes in the divine nature and the deity of the Christ and what his purpose was, when you shave back all of the religious ideology to get back to that system of purpose, it doesn't cut. And these are the lines that have been used to divide us as a people again. Because remember, again, like I said, like Christmas, Santa's coming, and if you haven't been right, this is the way that was taught to us. This is why now we're still looking. We're still looking. We're still looking. I'll give you a real clear example. Doctor tell you have high blood pressure and give you a diet that you have to live by, tell you to go exercise. We'll get into a prayer line and hope that the prayer line is going to change when really we've received the formula and the system that we need in our own bodies. And this is what I believe that Bible was saying, that we have been given the lines drawn out for what we need to do as a people, that we have to get back to a sense of ownership. We have to get back to a sense of empowerment in ourselves, unity, to where we can then take charge and not keep continuing to get into a prayer line and giving the offering that we have to keep our lights on to some preacher. Our lights go out and he's richer.
Amen.
These are things that people in the church should have a problem with, because it does not make sense and it definitely does not line up with the Word of God. Again, I do believe in the deity of the Christ. That's my personal belief. But I think that we have to be clear in our understanding that this idea that we have been given a diagnosis of diabetes and told what we should do and shouldn't do to be more health conscious, yet we're not more health conscious. We're getting in a prayer line and expecting something divine to happen in nature, when you really have the power within yourself to do something for yourself. It's corrupt theology. It's corrupt ideology. It's what's produced from a poisonous mind, and that poison a lot of time begins with the leaders who are teaching this corrupt theology and ideology.
Wonderful. Dr. Omar Johnson, I want to give you an opportunity to jump in. I guess I would like for
I was
you.
just going to say sorry. I was just going to say that one of the reasons that a lot of those of us who are evolving in our consciousness, the reason why a lot of brothers and sisters in the struggle take issue with the concept of the returning Messiah, not the Messiah, but the returning Messiah, is they feel that it smacks of spiritual dependency, which is something that was inculcated in us during the Great Ma'afa, during slavery. You know, when you're dealing with oppressed people, you got to be very careful about telling them there's a solution to their problems that is outside of themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Because
Mm-hmm.
it gives them a convenient excuse not to do for themselves.
Yes.
And that is where the fear is in the Messiah is coming back for us. To tell black people that, as opposed to telling them that you have to work yourself up through your problems, you have to pull yourself up. We have to sacrifice. We have to organize our money. We're the ones who are going to have to suffer the blood, sweat, and tears. When you tell them, okay, a dependent people already, to be dependent on the concept of a returning Messiah, it helps to legitimize their learned helplessness already.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like I work with parents in the school system, and the worst thing I could tell parents is all you have to do is vote for the right mayor, and the right mayor will fix your problem. It's the Obama oracle. It's the same situation. If you vote for the right president, black people's problems will be solved. If you join the right religion, your problems will be solved. If you just wait on the Messiah to come back, your problems will be solved. And what it does is it reinforces the learned helplessness of people who already don't think they have the ability to solve their problems. So it's not rejection of the Christ is returning concept, but as both the Baba and my brother said, we have to refine it to make sure it doesn't become another form of escapism. Because when you're dealing with oppressed people, you have to make sure you fill off all possible doors for escapism.
Yes.
Whether it's hitting the lottery, whether it's voting for Obama, whether it's waiting for Jesus, whether it's getting drunk on some liquor or smoking some marijuana to evaporate your problem. We have to make sure we're not giving our people another crutch to avoid their own responsibility and accountability for the situation that they're in.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Before I let Jamar have an opportunity to speak, I also want to say you are listening right now to Making Waves with Pastor Mia on Heaven 600. And I want to personally thank our sponsors, IFN, HB Tours, Nelson's Auto and Home Store. Jamar, jump in and answer for me. Do you believe in a Savior or do you believe in Jesus Christ?
I believe that Jesus was a person, a brother that came to the earth as a prophet. Yeah, I just think I agree with everyone else that when you trot out a prophet, you know, people begin to get a Messiah complex, and they get to, following, I guess, arbitrarily, whatever that prophet puts out. But I do believe Jesus came here, and he was a reincarnation of someone else too as well. So.
Okay, thank you. You want to give it a... Kyle,
Hello.
are you a Christian?
Yes, I am.
Wonderful. All right. My next question, gentlemen, is going into our history as slaves in this country. Give us your version of what you believe, how Christianity was packaged for slaves and encouraged to them to interpret for bondage.
Certainly, I'll go first this time. Well, I want to say, as a political utility, because some people don't know, religion is all political. Religions was used to conquer and colonize people. The Arabs conquered and colonized Africa through Islam. The Europeans conquered and colonized Africa through Christianity. So of course you have some traits which Muhammad and Jesus was of African descent, but of course those religions was used. Christianity was used to enslave our people.
Anybody want to jump in?
Well, I mean, it's clear, it's really easy for me, because you had a system, as has been said earlier today, a form, a organization, and a packaged sense of ideology that was presented to a people who were already in an unfamiliar place, where a language that was uncommon and unfamiliar to them was being spoken, and they looked, which is, I believe, still to this day one of the biggest problems, they looked at a people who had already conquered in this land and saw the prosperity associated with it and believed that that must be God. That must be the higher power, the source, the deity, the God, whatever you want to call it. If you look at Master, and Master has come to this place and he's been able to build, take ownership, and do all of the things that you once did in your native land, whatever he forms and teaches and packages and feeds to you must be God. So then that forms a relationship of trust between you and this person who looks like the representation of prosperity. So I say that to say, what's different in our churches today? When you got pastor who looks like the representation of prosperity according to everything that you say that you desire. He looks like he's made it. He's at the front. He seems to be the most intelligent. He's the best dressed and seems to have the most financial prosperity of anybody around. So it's easy to buy into what he's selling. So when we had that in the concept of slavery, you were looking at the one who appeared to have prosperity, which was Master. So you wanted to buy in. If all I had to do was tell you, if you do this, then you'll have that. If you do this, then you'll be like me and you'll have. To me, it's not even rocket science. It's not deep. It's easy when I take you away from everything that you've ever had, known, understood, believed, and owned, where you were a people of your own ownership, and bring you to a place where the owner says, in order to own, you have to believe this. Then I teach it to you in a way that it disempowers and enslaves you. You buy right in.
I want to add an addition, and I don't mean to speak out of turn, but we don't practice the Christianity, and we don't Africanize the Christianity. And I was taught, by Dr. Umar years ago that because we are taught our religious practice through the oppressor's eyes, through conquerors, we teach it through oppressive eyes and conquerors. So when we want to replicate a religion, we're not doing it within the confines of our African culture.
To coattail on that, one of the things that you will find when you look into what kind of spiritual and religious practice was taking place on the plantations is that there was established meetings that would take place where a preacher may come onto the plantation, and some representative of the plantation owner is there to make sure that the message is delivered properly, and that the audience is receiving the message in an enthusiastic and appropriate way, etc., etc. But then, there were the meeting houses in the woods where people would go after dark, when the overseers were not watching, and where the ring shot would happen, and where the calling of the ancestors would take place. And whenever this kind of thing was happening in certain seasons of the year, similar to when people have revival meetings these days, the big tent meetings and such, we would be doing what we would normally do, but then the lookout would say, "There's white folk coming," and the ring shot would stop, and the possessions would quiet down, and the people would just be standing or sitting and swaying and praying until the all clear was given and things went back to normal. So Here's that dichotomy again. You see? There was a lot that was taken, but we held on to many things in secret. Those, and unfortunately, those who considered themselves assimilated, who either had several generations of they were no longer enslaved, or they had several generations where they were quote unquote free blacks, and were doing everything they could to be as white and black skinned as they could possibly do. When folk left the South and arrived in the Philadelphias and the New Yorks and so forth, they did everything they could to shut down the Southern slave practice. Because when you really read into what our people were doing in our spiritual and religious practice out of eyesight of white folk, you will find that when people try to estimate how many of our people on these plantations were Christian, it will come out that perhaps 10 or 20% could actually be called Christians. The rest were practicing what they could remember from where they had come from. And this is very difficult to do, not so much just because of people watching you, you know, like Big Brother with cameras, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
But because it was not people in their 30s and 40s and even 20s for the most part who were dragged on those ships. It was people who were in their teens who had barely entered into the adult craft of living in a mature society.
Rites of passage and
knowing who they were, yes.
You see? These are the kind of people who you're going to get the most work from, you're going to get the least resistance from.
Yes.
Even though they was working us to death.
If you don't know who you are, yes, absolutely.
You know, they're still working us to death, but the younger ones are going to survive more than the older ones.
Absolutely.
Okay? Because they're not going to be rebelling as much.
Absolutely.
They're children.
I've helped you know who
They're
you are.
children, for God's sake.
I've given you your new identity. It's easy for me to give you an identity, a new one.
Yes.
If you're young and impressionable, and I can mold you and shape you better than an older person.
Absolutely.
I am totally, absolutely in agreement with you. Dr. Omar?
Yes. Whenever I go about the process of studying and investigating religion, not for myself, but just in general, the first thing I look for is the locus of control of that particular religious ideology. In other words, do they have an internal locus of control, or do they have an external locus of control? Religion with an external locus of control, meaning something outside of you has to come and save you or help you, those religions play into the hands of oppressors. They love those kind of religions. But religions that have an internal locus of control, that says we are the gods, we have to carry out the agenda, we have to affect our own change. Those are the type of religions that are feared by the power structure. So for me, beyond the ideology of the religion, where is the locus of control? Because even a religion or spiritual system that is rationally sound can be an enemy to the people if it still places the locus of control outside of that community.
That's true.
So I'm always looking at locus of control, even outside of religion, even if we look at politics. Okay, every organization, political or religious, has a locus of control. Do you advocate voting to change a condition? That's external. You know, do you advocate making sure we get a certain person in office? Are you advocating changing the views that white people have of black people in order to change our condition? Are you still looking outside of what we are able to do ourselves in order for liberation to take place? And any strategy that relies exclusively on prayer, exclusively on God, exclusively on the ancestors, exclusively on the return of Jesus Christ, exclusively on voting, you know, for political office or changing the minds of white folks, those are strategies that will fail us, because the only thing we can control at the end of the day is our own behavior. So locus of control is very, very critical when we talk about religion. Irrespective of what we think about it, if a religion has an internal locus of control, I would more likely align myself with a religion that I don't even believe in, because it has an internal locus of control versus one that I might believe in, but because the locus of control is external, I know it's only playing into the hands of the power structure. Sit and wait until something outside of you makes the change. The other thing I want to talk about quickly is we got to recognize that the religion will follow as the resources are available. See, people are loyal first to their stomach. And one of the reasons it's been so easy to influence African people to join this religion, that religion, this religion, that religion, even outside of slavery, after slavery, is because the people who brought the religion they brought jobs with it. They brought opportunity. We can look at any of the modern black religious nationalist organizations, whether it's the Nation of Islam, Moorish Science Temples, Guys and Earth, the Wapi movement, it doesn't matter. What they all have in common, although they may differ philosophically, is that they all brought opportunities for people. It doesn't matter how unorthodox your religion is. People will join it if you have opportunities for them. On the flip side, it doesn't matter how powerful your religious system or philosophy may be. If you do not have resources and opportunities for the people, that will be a church. That will be a church that won't have any members. If you don't have opportunities, you have to give the impression that you do. People will always follow the person who appears to be the most capable of helping them affect their immediate circumstance. Religion will always be followed by the resources that it has.
Absolutely.
I'm glad that you tacked that on, Dr. Umar, because today we see much of these organizations lacking in results. But you said that they still have the promise to be able to produce these results that people buy into, which is one of the things that that bother me by day. I work in a profession that brings that's economic development and jobs. I'm a person that's known throughout the city for helping people get connected to employment. And one of the things that I recently did is I reached out to a bunch of preachers and said, hey, I have all of these resources and these opportunities available, and I want to be able to kind of give you guys an inside track, because you got people sitting in your churches praying for jobs, and I have a connection to be able to get them tangible results. And the thing that that kind of stumped the whole project is because it was difficult for them to make that a priority. And I learned quickly that no matter who you are, who you say you are, what you say you're about, how much you say you're about the people, when you disconnect it with regard to the tangible ability to be able to connect people to real life and tangible things, you and those people live inside that idealism. And it was kind of discouraging, because this was not something that was immediately made a priority. But I realized, again, you can't make what's not a priority for someone a priority for them. It has to be something that they want to be a priority to them.
Absolutely. I want to give my last two questions to Dr. Omar. First, I want to thank you for coming. You practice Pan-Africanism, right? Are you still there?
Yes.
Okay. Can you give us a definition of what that is?
Yes, Pan-Africanism can be summed up into three basic principles. And by the way, Pan-Africanism is the black man's oldest formal political ideology. It predates every political ideology that we have now. Pan-Africanism is basically three tenets. Number one, all African people on the face of the earth are members of the same human family, and that they should identify with that human family before they identify with any other organization or movement to which they belong. So we believe that we are African before we're Muslim, we're African before we're Christian, we're African before we're Greek, we're African before we belong to any profession, we're African before our nationality. So you're an African from Nigeria. You're not a Nigerian who happens to be African. Okay, you're African before you're an American. You're African before you're Jamaican. So we believe that we identify with the human family first. That is the priority. Everything else is secondary to us being African. because our racial identity is the only identity we have that is permanently fixed by supreme consciousness. Regardless of what we believe in, everything else we chose ourselves. You chose Christianity, you can leave the church tomorrow. You chose the mosque, you can leave it tomorrow. But you can never leave being an African. That's the only group we belong to that God chose for us. We did not choose it. And because of that, we should identify with that first. Number two, we believe in self-determination. The problems that affect African people globally will require an international effort by African people. So we believe in universal solidarity, that all African people must have a hand in our freedom struggle, which only makes logical sense because all white folk are organized against African people. White supremacy is global. The Asian political movement is global. The Arab political and economic agenda is global. All groups of people have a global movement and network to solidify their power, everyone but us. So we believe that we must solve the problems internationally, that what happens to black people in America happens as a result of the fact that we do not have a strong Africa to advocate for us while we exist here. If you notice, our children are the only ones who get murdered by police. Even in 911, post 911, you didn't see Arab children being shot and killed by police because these people are connected to nations, independent nations in other parts of the world who have enough power to stand up on their behalf whenever they are mistreated. We lack that, and we will continue to suffer until we do something about it. And the third concept that I would speak on as it relates to Pan-Africanism, and that is, as Africa goes, so goes the rest of us. You cannot do better than your ancestral homeland. It's impossible. Chinese people get respect because China gets respect. British people get respect because Great Britain gets respect. Your respect is due to the level of respect that your international homeland has. And so we believe that because we are directly tied to Africa in terms of our political and economic circumstance, that we have to work on both sides of the Atlantic Ocean to improve our conditions. We need to fight here with our immediate struggle, but we also need to be helping Africa out because only with a strong Africa can there be a strong black America. Only with a strong Africa can there be a strong black Canada, black Europe, black in the Caribbean. We are affected by Africa's political situation. And trying to solve our problems without a global perspective has kept us in these problems. We have to internationalize the struggle, and we have to do it by ourselves. Self-determination is the Pan-African way. We do not integrate our struggles with no one. We don't allow non-African participation. What must be done for Africans must be done by Africans.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate that. You guys have been listening to Making Waves with Pastor Me on Heaven 600. Thank you for tuning in tonight. And again, every Thursday night at 8 o'clock. Good night.
Now, I didn't know I was Pan-African until you just told what it was. I had no idea.
Famous in 5 with lay servant Mickey Stanton.
Hi.
Hello. Tell us,
Thanks.
what church do you attend?
Out of the Box Deliverance Action Worship Center.
Wonderful. Do you worship and praise for your church?
I do, and one of the things that I do have planned is to help with the directing of the choir. So that's kind of one of the things that I'm looking forward to doing.
Wonderful. What is your current project right now?
Singing wise, the current project is to gather by the end of the year enough songs written, enough songs performed to actually compile a 9-track album. Now I'm looking at the different producers now as we speak to find out who can help me with this project. That way I can put the correct funds aside and get started.
Wonderful. Was singing always your goal?
It's always been a passion. From the time I was a baby, I was always singing every song I heard. And and I can put it this way, I've always loved to sing. The only thing I could sing was gospel. So gospel is something that I always reference back to. I was on choirs, gospel choirs, church, choir directors, things like that. So it's always been a root in Christ. But singing has always been something that I just do aimlessly while I'm walking down the street. Just people looking like, oh my God, well, she stopped singing. She's singing and singing and singing. So it's just something that I've always innately done.
Wonderful. What and who are your musical inspirations?
Ooh, okay. Now, not necessarily gospel, but India.Arie was one.
All right.
But the very first one was Stevie Wonder.
Okay.
Stevie Wonder, Whitney Houston, Aretha Franklin, Anita Baker, and oh wow, Jesus, I gotta.
It's a whole bunch of that. All right. Well, what made you want to sing?
You know, I don't know. When I was little, I was listening to Disney songs, and I was singing them. I mean, I think it had to be Cinderella.
All right.
When she was singing, and Lucifer came and smacked all the dirt everywhere. That was my favorite song to sing.
Okay. All right. I'm just glad you didn't say Hannah Montana. But anyway, what is your taste in music?
Well, it varies. I listen to neo soul, gospel. Primarily, when I was younger, when I started to sing, it was more so R&B, pop, hip hop, and gospel. Now, I kind of stay away from the hip hop artists we have today. I do like gospel hip hop, but outside of that, I kind of stick to my R&B.
Well, I like my old school hip hop. Anyway, who do you aspire to be like as a successful gospel artist?
Mary, and the fact that they have come strong in their talent repetitively. As far as aspiring to be like successfully, I don't really want to be like anybody success-wise. I just simply want God to use me the best way that He can.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Did you ever think that you would get this far?
It's been times that I've doubted it. It was times that I had no idea if I would ever be at a point where I was singing for a living, or singing, or versus just singing for a passion. So I've been taking God's path on this situation because I didn't want to push myself. I wanted Him to open the doors naturally.
Wonderful. Tell us one thing that you would like the listening audience to know about you when they listen to you do your spiritual writing with us every Thursday night at 8 o'clock. What would the one thing that you would like for them to know about you?
Those spiritual vitamins, I mean, I could write one a week in advance, and they never turn out to be the ones I use. It is always, I walk in and God moves me to write something different. It's never coming from a place of me. It's coming from a place of what God has put in my hands to say and actually prophesy. So I want everyone to know that whenever you hear the vitamin, and if it touches your heart, believe me, it was meant to, because it's not something that I could have come up with personally.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you. This has been the Famous in 5 on Making Waves with Pastor Mia on Heaven 600. Thank you for joining us tonight, and have a blessed evening.